What is up? Welcome to this week's episode of the Vanflip podcast. This week we are joined by Jason and Matt of WRAITH, not the UK hard rock band from the 1980s, because I did look that up and then that came up. So a lot of WRAITH from that time frame, but no WRAITH from starting in Indiana in 2016 and is about to drop their, is it sophomore record? Third
No,
record?
this is actually our fifth record. 14th
record. Look at that.
Right,
They've done so much already.
Not the 80s.
Not
no.
the- not-
I
not
wasn't
the 80s.
alive in the 80s, but
Yeah.
close. But
That Jason, that hurts my heart that you said that out loud because I was alive in the 80s. So anyway, welcome to the show, boys. How are you doing?
Pretty good, man. Can't complain. Thanks a lot for having us. We certainly appreciate it.
yeah,
Yeah.
good, man. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. You guys just recently signed a prosthetic, so that's cool. And again, you guys have a new record coming out, and that is Fueled by Fear, and that is due out at the end of June 28th, I
Yep.
believe, right?
Yep. Correct. Yeah, it's cool, man. We've actually been sitting on the prosthetic thing for a long time. So for the world to know is really nice because it's been eating us alive.
What does that what does that really mean? Like you guys just worked the deal out like a long time ago, and you just haven't been able to really say anything?
Yeah, 2022. So right when we started writing this record, we had signed with prosthetics. So we knew that it was going to come out on that label, but we couldn't talk about it necessarily. So signed the contract 2 years later, wrote the record, recorded it, finally got to, release it and talk about it. So it's been really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty much all 2023 was working on the record, man. We had some song ideas and stuff, but from, arranging everything and then recording it and then, mixing, mastering it, that was pretty much all 2023. So this year it's pretty much been the countdown to being able to talk about it. So it was really exciting a few weeks ago when we were able to talk about the details and, kind of announce everything. And the response has been great. It seems like people are really excited for it. So
Yeah. So they just decided to keep it under wraps until the record was done, or why did that even? 18 plus months is a long time to keep some stuff under wraps when you just
I don't necessarily know. It sounds like EJ just likes to make the announcement when there's music to accompany it. So I suppose it makes sense, right? Like it's a lot of news at once, I guess, is better than, in 2022 saying we signed, but we don't really have anything to show for it yet. So I think just making it kind of a package thing to try to build some hype around it.
Yeah, and you had left. Well, I don't know if you left, but whatever your time with, I guess, redefining darkness with the last record, which came out 2021. So the year,
21. Yeah,
the year prior to you guys being signed. So like, did you just kind of fulfill that obligation with that label, and then just how does prosthetic come in the picture? And then again, like, how do they? It's just wild that you don't really necessarily hear about like a 2-year waiting period of like announcements, but obviously they saw something in the band and. How did that all like transpire? Or were you like lured over from, redefining?
No, honestly, it's kind of I guess not an underwhelming story, but we had a great relationship with Redefining Darkness. We still do. So they actually put out our last 2 records. They put out Absolute Power and they put out Undo the Chains. So we had been working with them for a while previously. But I think the idea was always that he was very much a label that operated within his wheelhouse, and if bigger and better things came about for one of the bands on his label, he was kind of like our biggest cheerleader. I remember we had the conversation with him, and he was like, "That's incredible. I wish you guys the best. I can't wait to hear the new music." So it's not like it was a backdoor deal, or we were kind of like shopping around. Just one of those things where I think the opportunity presented itself, and we talked to him about it. We thought that it would be better for us in terms of visibility and just to reach more people. So we had his blessing. We talk to him all the time still. He's a great dude, Tommy from Redefining. So shout out to him.
Yeah, it's just a weird situation, obviously, to get signed without really having anything to on. I mean, I'm sure you planned to write and record. Obviously,
Yeah.
That's usually the plan for a lot of bands, but without
Sure.
a lot to show for it. I mean, did you send demos over or anything like that of the new material that's coming out, or?
not really. I mean, that was the cool thing. So like when we put out Undo the Chains, right, obviously there was a lot of interesting things going on in the world because we were writing that in 2020, right?
What do you mean, Jason?
Yeah. Tell us about those things.
Yeah, I mean, kind of a crazy period, but Chains really, not to say even prior to that, like with Absolute Power and even to an extent Heed the Warning, just like that was really when I feel like we started having the opportunity to play a lot like outside of our area. You know, we're from right outside of Chicago in Indiana, kind of northwest Indiana, so like right on the border, real industrial sort of area, kind of blue collar area is where we're from. And you know, we really had the opportunity to start traveling, and we got out to the West Coast, and you know, we went out to Texas and Utah, and got out to not far like East Coast, but kind of more out towards that area, right? Like Ohio, Pittsburgh, you know, we played out there off of Undo the Chain. So it kind of like really helped us to continue developing our fan base and, you know, just get out there more. So I think it was probably on the back of that, you know, Prosthetic took notice and we started having those conversations, which was great because you can tell from those conversations that they really believe in the band and they're really enthusiastic about what we're doing. And, you know, I think we kind of took that knowledge into the writing sessions for Fueled and really wanted to make the best record we could, really kind of refine everything we do. So, I think we did. Hopefully the listener and the fan, you know, feels that way when they hear it. But I think we're super stoked on what we're sitting on. So,
well, I can say this. I'm not super privy with your earlier material, but I did spend a good time with the last, at least the singles that you've recently put out in the last couple of weeks/months and the last record. And I can say there's definitely, and I was going to ask you, like, who are we worshiping when we're writing music? Because there's definitely like nodes of just all thrash and speed metal throughout like time almost, but a lot of like the earlier sounding stuff. And it doesn't sound, I think the only thing that doesn't sound like it is probably that we have updated recording material and mastering styles and stuff like that. But if you had recorded it back in the 80s, it probably would sound similar to what was going on, you know, in the early days. So like, yeah, who are we worship? What is WRAITH worship? You know, who are we worshiping?
Sure. Well, we're absolute like music nerds for sure. So like everything that came out in the 80s, we have consumed it in some capacity. Like we just like it, you know. We were literally just standing in the garage talking about the Big Four and what are the formative records of the Big Four and how about the production on this and that, or you know, how cool is it that this band played this style while this band was playing that style. So I think there's a lot, but if you were to distill it down, it's mostly like punk rock and classic thrash metal. I think it really is that combination, which now I think transfers to our like sometimes hardcore influence. You know, we do like a lot of that real stompy what I would equate to like the classic hardcore bands, the Black Flags, the Minor Threats, you know, like we listen to a lot of that. But yeah, there's a ton of all the big ones. Metallica's my big one. That's like the band that inspired me to play Explorers and The Strong Right Hand. And I never wanted to be a frontman. So ironically enough, this is my first time playing guitar and singing in a band. But if I had to like give you somebody I was trying to be, it would be James Hetfield in 1986.
Yeah. I'd echo a lot of that. I think the cool thing about our band is, you know, there's the four dudes in the band, right? Or, you know, four dudes that wrote the record and recorded the record. And I think it's interesting because there's like a lot of overlap. We all have influences that we share in common. You know, as Matt said, Metallica is a huge one. But, you know, we also have kind of diverse influences too. So I think it's always interesting whenever we get together and we're jamming in the jam space and we're like putting a song together. You know, you might have stuff that kind of comes out of not necessarily left field because it all feels like it kind of fits, right? But there's a few main elements, right? There's kind of the punk rock thing. There's like the rock and roll kind of Motorheady sort of thing, and then there's
that's
like
the one I hear a lot of.
Yeah,
totally.
That's a big one.
I think that's the thing. Like for me, like, you know, just as an example, like my big thing, so I got into music off of punk rock. I got into music off of bands like Dead Kennedys and Bad Religion and Pennywise.
How are you finding all that shit with not being around in the 80s, dude? How is that possible?
My school library, mostly, just sitting there literally typing.
That was the thing, like, for me, it was a lot of the gateway stuff, like, you know, not to be silly, but, like, you know, I was born in 91, so, I mean, I was of the age where I remember starting to play Tony Hawk Pro Skater, right?
Yeah.
So then you hear a Bad Religion song on Tony Hawk Pro Skater, and then that took me down a whole path. I get into like, you know, No Control or Suffer or whatever, and that like changed my life. So from there, well, what bands are kind of lumped in with Bad Religion? So then I'd start getting into other bands, and then I'd get into the classic hardcore bands. You get into Dead Kennedys and Ramones and stuff, and then from there, that kind of informed me getting into thrash. So then you get into bands, well, what bands were influenced by those bands, right? Well, then you listen to early Megadeth and Slayer, and Jeff Henneman with the fucking Dead Kennedys sticker on his guitar,
Mm-hmm.
So then you kind of get into this whole other realm of thrash metal, and that's really where I found it. So to me, I always feel like I bring in a lot of that Bay Area sort of thrash influence. I'm wearing the Forbidden shirt, right? He's got the Metallica Forbidden shirt on. So Testament, Forbidden, Exodus, Heathen, bands like that. Like that's kind of what inspires a lot of my riffing that I bring to the band.
Interesting.
But it's cool, right? Because then now we've already talked about all these different sounds and these different influences that kind of come together and then mix to make our thing, So.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up the Motorhead thing because I don't know which song it was, and I don't know if it's one of the newer singles or if it was just something that was playing in because I had all your stuff on random for the most part earlier today, and there was a track in there that I was like, and don't let this go to your heads, guys, keep it at bay. But there was a track that I was like, in a weird way, this is like Motorhead, like it's the riffs, the music behind the vocals sounded like very, like just engine cranking, like Motorhead, just on the road vibes, and then the vocals were like definitely not like they were Lemmy-esque. Obviously, it's not exactly the same, but it was like I was like, dude, this could pass. Like
hey, I'll take that for sure. Yeah.
If you were if you were drunk enough at a bar somewhere, you'd be like, hey, this is a new Motorhead song.
Yeah, I thought he was dead. But no, I think like to Jason's point, that's a huge compliment because I feel like that's the biggest trick, right? Like my thing about music always is it genuine? So like if the people that are playing it mean it, it doesn't have to be complicated for me. Like I said, I grew up a punk rock guy. I loved a lot of terrible bands that sounded awful with awful production, but I could tell that they meant it. And that is like the big thing for me. If I listen to your band and I could tell that you are into it and you mean what you play, I'm in. I'm a fan. Yeah. So if like the punk rock thing to me transitioned to thrash because I was getting a little tired of the poor production and I wanted something that carried that same intensity, but sounded good. And like the people wanted to play instruments.
So you go to thrash. That sounds so much better.
Yeah, exactly how it goes, dude. So I stepped over into the thrash camp. I could still dress like a punk. I could still carry the punk mentality. But now we're getting into the realm where people can actually like riff, and the songs, carry some political undertones and there's definitely an anti-authority thing to it. But sometimes they could be more fantastical. It can be about something that's made up, or you can talk about something like we have a song called Warlord, it's like that's obviously not something that I've ever experienced, but I can put myself in that place with my perspective and write a song about it,
Yeah.
So it was just, for me, it was a very organic transition to that. And I think just it's been chasing that for 25 years or whatever.
Yeah, it's not like it's a dangerous comment to say that, you're Motorhead-esque because there's a lot of weight that goes behind that. And obviously, I don't want to say for a new band releasing its fifth record, but for a band that
new band.
Yeah. For a band that's only been around less than 10 years. And I mean, depending on how you're cranking out the albums every other couple of years, it's heavy to live up to that expectation. But again, I think if someone were to listen to your music and or see you live, they'd probably understand where I'm coming from at that, because obviously I'm the only one that thinks that you're probably Motorhead influenced, or obviously you have influenced by Motorhead, like Jason said.
Definitely.
So you were saying that you weren't really necessarily a vocalist before, but through my research, you're listed as a vocalist on most of the albums.
Yeah, so in WRAITH, I've always been the singer and rhythm guitar player.
Okay.
In previous bands,
Gotcha.
I was always guitar player, bass player. I never really honestly even wrote much in terms of lyrics. I would like help singers in bands sometimes if they were stumped on something. I would try to fill in the blanks, but it was quite the undertaking. And I think it was honestly something that I surprised myself the first time I wrote a song, like the guitar parts and the vocals, and then sang it. I'm like, oh, this like isn't bad. So I think that there's some hope. I think I can probably get away with doing this, without having to invite a bunch of other people into the band. So I don't mind it at all. To me, it's a fun challenge. I love playing guitar. I love riffing. I love listening to riffs and writing riffs. But having the lyric thing and the performance part be like an additional challenge to me is a lot of fun. I really have enjoyed it, throughout the whole process.
And do you, you were saying earlier how like, some of the allure of like thrash and stuff like that was the political and anti-establishment mentality or lyrics. how does that play into Wraith, or does that play into Wraith at all? Because obviously you were talking about how you have like, fictional stories in your songs too.
So,
well, Jason.
Yeah, no, I'll just say one thing really quick. Because obviously with this band, it's cool because like I write lyrics too, but not for Wraith. I think it's interesting. It's like, the process we have a lot of times is we'll start with a song title. Or I'll have like a chunk of a song or something, and I'll really like feel a strong way about like, hey, I think this one should be about this. So then I'll get with Matt, like on the new record, for instance, right? There's the song that it's like second to last track. It's called Truth Decay. Total like fast ripper of a song, like total thrash, like Bay Area thrash type song, right? And I kind of let Matt know, I'm like, I want to call this song Truth Decay, and here's what I think it should be about. And he took that challenge and then wrote the song, wrote the lyric content, wrote, the patterns and did all that. And then like, when we were jamming it, like showed it to us and, hey, what do you think of this? And it was just killer, like knocked it out of the park, and really kind of gets into, without getting too like on the nose with it, right? Just kind of like it talks about just kind of our state of the world, and just things we see, and we all kind of, the shared experiences we all have with just how kind of crazy shit has become just in general, right? And that's kind of all it gets to, at least with that track. But it's just kind of cool because you have a song like that which definitely has more of that that vibe to it. But then Warlord is a fictional story, right? It's basically a monster, it's that sort of song, right? And it's just cool we can do both, and that you have a lot of fun with different ideas and different themes and stuff, throughout the course of the record.
And I think that to play off that even further, like I went to school and I have a degree in history, and I minored in political science and economics, and Jason has a degree in political science and I think minored in history. So like the social commentary thing is something that we both like spend a lot of time paying attention to anyway. We dedicated years to learning, how to critically think and process that information. So I think for us, that just is part of it. I think it's part of being alive. You have to be aware of what's happening. So I think to have an outlet to, under the guise of a thrash metal band, make a statement is a lot of fun. That's another part of the challenge that I truly enjoy, because I do pay attention. I am always kind of in tune with what's happening, and then to be able to spin that in a song like Truth Decay, where you wouldn't listen to it and say like, oh, there's a message here. It's just kind of a general observation. But yeah, I think it's something that we spend a lot of time focusing on.
Yeah, would you say it's like 50-50, or are you more one towards the other as far as like, fictional, whimsical lyrics, or lyrics about something in particular that you feel strongly about? And
50-50.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever thought about it, but honestly, it's probably a 50-50 split. And cool. even the whimsicals, and I don't want to say it like it's like a joke.
And I'm not saying it either like that. Whimsical is a weird word, but
Sure, no, I get it, and metal can be cheesy in some aspects. Like I'm totally aware of that.
It's like fiction,
yeah,
it's a story,
right? It's a story. Yeah, I like Jason's. Yeah, it's a story. But I would say like usually those stories are inspired by something that's actually happened. So like, I think I just want to be cautious and not be too on the nose. So I'll try to find a way to incorporate a theme, but write a story about it in 2.5 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's always cool too when you leave it up to interpretation
sure,
in some regard. Yeah. And I feel like that's the nice thing, at least with the songs on the new record, that I can kind of point to, that kind of have some basis in the real world. They are, there's enough of that room there lyrically for kind of listener to interpret it in their own way and take whatever out of it they want to, versus being totally like, pounding a fucking nail in, right, with a hammer.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, or just like the riffs. That's cool too. Yeah. That's what I always say. Like, if you just like the riffs, that's fine with me. You're not hurting my feelings.
Yeah. So Matt, when you were saying just a second ago, like themes and whatnot, are there themes for like per song or an album? And if that's the case, then how do you juggle having those, fictional story, whimsically songs mixed with the politically backed or anti-establishment, or maybe even a historical reference song?
Yeah.
How do you mix those together into one cohesive piece of work as an album?
Sure. I think that WRAITH, there's general themes to the band. So I would say I mostly am operating, within what we've established as the themes of WRAITH, which, are a lot of the classics: war, authority, anti-authority, political tensions, worst case scenario situations, and then there's some, fiction built in there. Obviously, there's, creatures or personas that have been created. So I think just operating within what we've already established is what I shoot for. But I really don't give it that much thought. I think whatever the inspiration is, I try to lean more into that, because I don't want to start to say like, well, we already have a song about war, so I can't write another song about war. If inspiration strikes and there's 12 songs about war on the next record, I guess that's just going to be what it is. I don't want to. I would be afraid of that disrupting that creative process, so I just kind of let it happen organically, and it always seems to shake out into a ratio that makes sense. There's not too much of one thing.
I was going to say too, I think one of the things, like in terms of process, like every band is different with this, and it's always interesting for me. That's like, I'm a huge fan. We haven't had the opportunity to do one yet, but I'd love like one of these days to do like a fly on the wall studio thing, like while we're recording it, and be able to look back at that. But like, I love watching when bands are like in the studio and like what their creative process is. I feel like for us, one of those things is like Matt on his phone has this note, this like note document, right, that has all these titles. It's got all these song titles that we kind of collectively come up with, or like we'll hear something. And I'm sure tons of bands do that, right?
Right. It's just funny that you're like sitting here like constantly thinking of just titles of songs. And
you try to put some cool like words together, right, and like come up with maybe that hasn't been done in the millions of fucking bands that exist in the world and will exist, right?
But then how did Ice Cold Bitch make the cut? That definitely is a song.
Well, that's the thing with Ice Cold Bitch. So Mike, our drummer, kind of wrote a lot of like the riffs and stuff for that track, and he's got this like trilogy of songs that he's putting together where it's about this like what was the first one? So on Undo the Chains, it was Mistress of the Void.
Yeah.
Now it's Ice Cold Bitch on this one, and then he's got an idea for the next record. He wants to make this like trilogy of these like hard rocker sort of songs.
Female character,
his evil female character, supernatural female character.
So that's like interesting. That's interesting. You have like different storylines going through different albums, but you also have like non-storyline songs, right?
Totally. Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, would you ever do like a full concept record? Like a full-on concept record?
I don't think so.
I don't see that, but yeah, I mean, like that's the whole thing for me. Like, I guess what I was getting at with the previous thing is just that it helps to like kind of have that as an organizing thing, So like we knew this record was going to be called Fueled by Fear 2 years ago.
We actually came up with the title when we were recording Undo the Chains. So Mike played me a riff and then said the title for a song called Fueled by Fear.
He's like, this would be really cool.
And I was like, I like that. That's the next record. And we weren't even done with Chains yet.
But then I think like that, even if it's just a combination of words, right? 2 or 3 words together, that kind of has the organizing ability to like set the stage. Because if you know what it's going to be called and you kind of know what the overall vibe you're going for is, I think that informed, probably maybe subconsciously, but it informed a lot of the music we wrote for this record. Because then it's like, we knew we wanted to, expand on a lot of the different sounds that we've done previously. The heavy stuff is heavier. The faster stuff is faster. Really intricate stuff is more intricate, and just kind of using different influences and trying to capture different vibes than maybe we did previously. So, and a lot of that can come from just, fueled by fear. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And then we had a lot of conversations about that, and I think, like I said, that informed the writing of it.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see where like song titles or album titles do come from, especially in like the death metal world, because it feels like you have to be like, I don't know, the craziest, like you said, just throw a bunch of words together sometimes and maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't, and maybe that's the whole like ordeal and allure behind it, So it's crazy to think of a song title and be like, what does that song sound like? Let's create that song.
Yeah, that's very much the process, though. It's like we look at the list and we'll say, that's a really cool title, so let's match music to that. Like, let's try to make that this song, and like the working titles often are just the titles. Like, as we're writing and demoing, we already named it. Like, we're committed to calling Ice Cold Bitch, right. Or Fueled by Fear is going to be Fueled by Fear, or Heathen's Touch is already Heathen's Touch before we've ever put music to it. We just kind of like, it's the undertaking. Now we know, and we have in our heads what that is supposed to sound like, so let's just make it sound like that. But like Jason said, everybody's process is different, and ours, I'm sure, is unique to us, but probably not completely unique.
Yeah, that's always been helpful for me. I know some bands will be like, they'll name it like fucking Tuna Fish or something like that, and then I'll be, okay, sweet, man, this one's going to be called, Satan's Asshole or something. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's different for every band, but I feel like for us, that's worked.
Yeah.
And allows us to kind of generate some cool shit. So,
And usually, like, if you're writing something or whatever, and you just kind of loosely call the song something, the band will get used to calling it that. But then, obviously, when it comes time to putting it on a record or whatever, or creating the actual title, then it's a totally different thing, and it's sometimes hard for the band to like click.
Go
totally,
back, or acknowledge it as like the title that's on. For sure.
This is like Squiddly Song 3. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I would say we've never done that. We just like we name the songs. Try to do it early on. Yeah.
Without checking your notes and everything like that on your phone, do you know of song titles that you guys have definitely said, no, that's never going to be a song?
I usually delete those ones.
Oh.
So if it's we've talked about it, like if I come up with something and I add it, usually every once in a while I'll like take a screenshot and send it to our group chat and be like, this is kind of what I got. And if there's a dud in there, it just goes. We just get rid of it.
Have you ever like maybe asked ChatGPT about like, hey, here's some song titles I've created. What are some song titles basically loosely around this?
No, I'm not a ChatGPT guy. I'm not big in the AI into music thing. I try to make it all as unique as it can be, I guess. You know, metal's existed for a while, so it's not always the most original, but I haven't used that yet.
Interesting. Yeah, AI is a weird thing. I think a lot of people are very worried or scared by it, but I think I think people don't realize it's a lot harder to use in general. But
for sure. And
I've never used the music making shit. Like I've never used any like, hey, make me a pop song like Drake in 3 minutes or something, or 3-minute long pop song, which I'm sure it could, because that kind of stuff is just
repeatable,
formulaic in general. So yeah.
But that's exactly the point I was going to make. I think I'm not really that worried about it for metal because I don't think it would work. I think in terms of structure and I don't know. I can't picture it writing a race.
I've thought about it, and my feelings on it are, yes, it'll work. Obviously, it'll work for the same crowd that it already works for currently.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So like
other people would call it bullshit right away, I think.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, it's maybe not metal, but like certain metal core. I'll loosely use the finger quotes for that. Like the metalcore bands, like if you're at the mall looking for metalcore, AI it's got you.
Right, yeah, it'll do it.
It'll get you there. You'll get exactly where you need to go. But if you want something else, it's not going to make a shitty metal song, and a lot of people like shitty metal songs.
Sure, yeah, I get it, man. Yeah, makes sense to me.
I wonder if you could actually say like, "Hey, make a shitty metal song," and then.
Well, that might be more successful. I feel like AI tries too hard, right? Like it's designed to be perfect, and it wants to make, based off the information it has, something that sounds similar. So maybe shitty metal song might be the trick, dude. You cracked the code.
The album artwork thing might be crazy in death metal and metal in general, because it's already kind of like very some stuff like death metal and stuff is very gory, or very like their artwork gets crazy. So with AI being like just hallucinating all the time, it seems like it could be a pretty cool avenue to at least be inspired by, I should say, not copy, but just like
I was gonna say, I like early on when that first like Mid-Journey and all those things started becoming a thing, like I was pretty intrigued by it as like like some of the artwork that was being generated like through it, not to replace having a flesh and blood artist like create something. I've always been a big proponent of that, but it's interesting because I've got a lot of friends, on social media and stuff that are, artists that do shirt designs and do album art and do all these things. And I've had some conversations with them, like, about how they feel about that. Like, how do you feel about AI kind of being a thing? And there's lots of them that use it as, like, exactly kind of what you just said a minute ago, like as a prompt. Yeah. And they'll say, oh, okay, what would this look like if A leads to B, B leads to C? And they get the prompt back, and then they kind of use that as maybe an idea generator to then create their own thing right off of a blank canvas, as opposed to just like taking it and saying, oh, hey, this is, because I think you have all sorts of issues that come into play there when someone types in, oh, yeah, I want to do, some Elran Cantor in the style of Elran Cantor or whatever, right? Chad or Mid-Journey or one of these things, and they shit out something that looks like 90% kind of like it, right? But with 10 fingers or 15 fingers or something like that. Like, that's where it gets kind of, I understand the issue there, right? Yeah. But I think there's all sorts of interesting integrations that just we haven't thought of yet, or, But I think those artists that are maybe looking at it and not totally closing themselves off to it and looking at it as maybe something that is could be creative, as an assist as opposed to a that's replacing something else.
I think that's how I'm. For the record, I'm not worried about it at all for the most part going forward. Other than like maybe one day it'll take over and then that's another whole thing. But until that point, I'll probably hopefully be dead. But anyway, I'm not necessarily worried about it, like taking jobs. Or I mean, not really yet. But I'm not worried about it ruining stuff because, like again, there's a lane for everything, and there's going to be a lane for people who like generated shit because there already is a lane of that anyway.
Yeah.
It's the big mainstream lane. So that's always going to be like that. But even like as an artist myself that draws and stuff like that or creates, digital works and stuff like that, I have a hard time just visualizing something in my head. I've always had a hard time visualizing it in my head. So like if I were to draw something just like out of memory, dude, that's almost near impossible for me. I'm very much like a visual representation. Like I can look at something and draw it. So that's where like stuff like, what would this look like? Like a two-headed fucking lamb and a goat, and they're zombies or something like that. What would that look like? And then, then I can visually see it and be like, oh, I can then change it or alter it a little bit in my head.
Yeah, like a jump-off point. I've honestly been explaining it like the internet. Like everybody was afraid of the internet at first too. That was supposed to ruin the world.
Is it not? It isn't.
I mean, kind of. I guess depending on how you mean. But we've just found ways to integrate it into our regular lives, and it's just part of us now. Part of the culture. Everybody uses it. Everybody's got it on their phone. And I think at some point AI is just going to become that. I don't think it's going to be this weird, dangerous takeover thing. We're just going to find a way to regulate it enough to make it, part of our everyday use, part of people's jobs, part of, inspiring art, whatever. Yeah, I'm not that afraid of it either.
Let's circle back to the new album.
Sure.
Sorry, I got something in my throat there. So you've kind of been using the same guy, CJ, for like everything you guys have done in WRAITH. What is it about Mr. Rayson that you just love?
Just super easy to work with, and I think there's a level of investment with CJ because he has done all of the records, so he wants to outdo himself, and I think we collectively want to outdo ourselves. So when we all get together to make the record, it's very much like, here's the new gear I bought, or I want to try this now, or instead of, like the first couple records were plugins, and now we're reamping, and how do we make that sound good? And I think it's just he's been part of the process with us, so it's been fun to grow kind of at the same time. Plus, all of us have strong personalities, shocker, like musicians with strong personalities, and I think he's just a guy that is very good at delivering criticism. So when he says, oh, you do that, I'll save that take, but do it again. Or maybe you should phrase it this way because I think it would fit the song better. He's just like been around a lot, so it's not like an affront. It's not like he's telling us what to do. It's a suggestion that I think most of the time results in a better end product. So I just think that relationship has been there over the years.
Interesting. And the artwork for the album was done by Andre. How did you guys link up with him?
I actually don't remember. Do you remember?
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't. I think it was just one of those things. Like obviously, he's done a lot of bands we look up to. He's a Municipal Waste, and all sorts of, kind of thrash artworks, right? And has a very distinct style, and it's really cool. I remember, when we were kind of talking about who should do Undo the Chains, he was one of the kind of the front runners of like, let's reach out. And we're always constantly, I think I said it before in the last topic we were talking about, but like, we've got tons of like artists that we either have seen their stuff and we've reached out to them, or they've reached out to us, and kind of form relationships, and we use a lot of different artists for our merch designs and things like that. So we were aware of Andre, and he totally knocked it out of the park with Undo the Chains, with the kind of the wraith and the towers in the background and the hourglass and all that stuff. Just like a really cool cover, and once again, us being metal musicians and loving heavy metal, like the artwork is a huge component of it. I feel like, it may be a different era now from the 80s where you'd go into a record shop and you'd buy an album sight unseen just based on the cover, because this looks badass, and you don't have an opportunity to listen to it. So you buy the record and you go home and you spend a month digesting it with the gatefold and everything. It's a little
You've
different.
Already wasted your money on it, so you better get your
exactly. You get your money worth.
Gotta
out
listen
of it.
to it. That's
I feel like we still, there's kind of that like romanticism around that still. I think a great piece of art kind of can help set the scene. for, a piece of music. So, he just knocked it out of the park last time, and we had a kind of a cool concept in mind for this one. So it was like, see what he can do, and he knocked it out of the park again, I think. So
yeah, it's kind of been refreshing to hear you guys say that, because obviously I come from the 80s, the time before you guys, but that was like because of my age, I grew up with only having $15 to like every couple of weeks maybe to spend on one CD or a tape or whatever. And I spent a lot of time just staring at the liner notes in the record or the CD case and holding that in my hand. And there's many records that I probably would have returned immediately if I had like the ability to like not return, but like never listen to again, like on streaming. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of records I would have never done that with. And then there are some records that I would visit just because like the reason I even am into like heavy music is because I forced myself down this, road. Like I remember like 311 came out and I was like, okay, I don't necessarily like dig it, but it's also like cool and different than whatever I've listened to my entire life, and my friends like it. So like I gotta like it. And then that just kind of spawned from like, 311 to Korn to heavier stuff. And then, obviously you get bitten by the bug and you just go down the rabbit hole. But
yeah, totally.
It is like, I still to this day though, will like buy death metal long sleeve shirts based on just like how cool the artwork is. If it's a band I don't know, and like I'll check it out specifically because of that, and vice versa. Well, and on the other side, if it's not good, I'm passing a lot of it.
Sure, but I just think like it's not just the music for heavy metal, right? It's the imagery, it's the uniform, to use the term loosely, I guess. It's the shirts. Like we care a lot about merch and the way that our band is presented. It just means a lot to us. Like sometimes to the point where we're probably a pain in the ass about it, but like we don't want to put out a shitty t-shirt, and I don't want to have shitty artwork, like we spent a lot of time writing the music, and I can't draw to save my fucking life. Like I couldn't draw. If you told me to draw you a picture, it'd be the worst thing you've ever seen. But I can write a song, so I want somebody else who's a master of their craft to pair something with the thing that I feel like I'm pretty good at. And then collectively, we've now made something that's important, right? There's great art, there's great music. I spent time writing the lyrics, it's all very there's thoughtful, and like there's just a lot of energy that goes into it. So, I mean, I think that's super important. You got to have cool art.
Yeah,
you got to have cool
makes
t-shirts.
It the whole package, I feel like if you put the thought into everything from kind of the bottom up,
For sure. Yeah, and like you guys are a little younger. You're about a decade younger than I am. So you're about 30-ish, right? Turning 30?
Yeah, mid-30s.
Cool. So how did you guys kind of like get that kind of mindset? Because obviously in the now times, the younger kids don't give a shit about, well, some kids don't give a shit about the liner notes or caring about like, what the t-shirt looks like or how the whole project is presented and whatnot. How did you guys like, because obviously you grew up listening to the older stuff and that is this, that, the other, but like how did you guys get into the mindset or to where you are now to where like you're very cohesive about how everything is presented?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, we were one of probably the last generations that kind of came to this stuff in a physical way. Like, I remember going to the record store and buying CDs, maybe not so much buying vinyls, right? But I was still
I didn't buy
CDs.
Vinyl either, so don't worry about it, dude.
You couldn't really, like, chase stuff down. We didn't have streaming. We didn't have Spotify. We didn't have Bandcamp. We didn't have, YouTube. Yeah. We didn't have anything like that. So, a lot of that in the early days, like, early 2000s for me, like, even still at that point, it was a lot of just organically like, okay, hey, so-and-so's brother's, friend burned a CD of some Slayer record or something. Here you go. Check it out, right? I had tons of CDs, and that's how I was exposed to a lot of this stuff, and it wasn't really easy to just buy something if you wanted it. So it was a lot of, like, bootlegs and burned CDRs and shit like that, and even tapes. Like I remember, I had buddies who would give me recordings. They'd sit there with a little tape recorder and record something off of a CD or off of a record. So
or the radio. Like, that was me. I was just waiting for the right song on the radio. Boop.
So for me, it was a lot of that where I think, almost kind of echoes of a bygone era where when you did get your hands on it, I remember I'd sit there and I'd the record I would point to is Horoscope by Overkill. I always remember, you open up that, I had the CD, when I finally got my hands on it, and it was an original copy of, the record from the early 90s, and open it up and it's just the band, and the band picture is badass. It's like they're in an alleyway in, probably New Jersey or whatever, right? They're in an alleyway, and they're all, leather jackets, tight black pants, white high tops, band shirts, long hair. And for me in 2003 or whatever, right? It's 2003. It's 20-something years ago at this point, 22 years ago or whatever, right? But that was cool. And then that kind of informed the whole idea of this whole package. I was just hooked on that. I was hooked on the music, but I was hooked on the presentation. And also, I just thought that was so fucking cool, just seeing these dudes and they're living the music, they're living it, breathing it, eating, sleeping it. They obviously love what they're doing, and you just want to be that. Even for us in the Midwest, we're these Midwest kids.
Yeah.
That, but it's cool. And I think that really, that still sticks with us now, right? Because a generation or two after us, I don't think they had that same experience because things started getting easier.
Yeah, their experience is definitely different. And I don't necessarily know if it's better or worse, obviously, but I think they're just less connected. But again, I think that is also changing too, because obviously now in the world that we live in our little metal and hardcore world, tapes are fucking the thing, and that's the worst way to possibly listen to any kind of music.
Totally.
In my
but there's something about it, right?
There's something.
The card, the tape,
it's so
it's just
stupid though, dude. Nostalgia is so stupid, dude.
Where do you even get a tape player anymore?
I don't know, but hey, my record store down the street, Tiger Records, shout out Tiger Records. They started carrying fucking CD Walkmans again, brand new CD Walkmans.
I've seen them. I mean, my experience is very similar to Jason's. I think I remember buying my first couple real formative metal records physically, going to Circuit City, rest in peace, or FYE at the time used to have an awesome music selection. I mean, I spent, and him too, because we used to run into each other all the time, but we have a disc replay, a music exchange place around here. I mean, dude, we would literally go and I would start in the A's in metal and I would go into the Z's. I would just, every single album I thought was cool, I would pull it out and look at it. And if the cover was badass and the insert was cool and the guys looked cool, or they thanked a band I liked on the back, I would buy it. You know what I mean? And then I would come home and I had the 6-disc changer in my bedroom and I would sit on my floor and just listen to the records. And to your point, some of them I never listened to again, but they were $3 and I didn't really care. Some of them inspired me to find 5 more bands. Maybe I didn't love that band, but they were wearing a Broken Bones shirt. So now I have to listen to, now I have to find a way to get my hands on the Broken Bones record so I can listen to that. You know what I mean? I just feel like there was definitely, it was like a quest for me. It was the thing I liked to do. I would ride my bike there. I would, pour over the music forever.
I remember, it's a funny one. So, it was Borders bookstore.
Yeah.
I remember I'd go to Borders, and I remember ordering it was Emperor. It was Prometheus, Discipline of Fire and Demise. I ordered that album probably from some fucking warehouse in Norway. It took 2 months to get to my Borders, and I remember I got the phone call, "Hey, your CD's in," and that's the type of shit, right? Because at that point,
that's how you got
it. Had broken up. It wasn't like the resurgence now where Emperor's a thing again and they're playing shows and they're playing festivals and they're doing all this stuff and it's on Spotify and you can stream it, whatever. It was it literally, I had to track it down because there wasn't a local copy around here. I didn't know anyone that listened to them, but I was really interested in the music, so it was okay, you can order a copy from this warehouse in Norway. Okay, sure.
So you had no idea what Emperor sounded like at the time you ordered the record, or you kind of had a hint or an inkling of what it may be like?
So I'd gotten the kind of one of the with the vocalist in Emperor Isan, right? I was a fan of his solo shit. So they had his solo record at Borders that had come out at the time in 2006 or whatever. So I bought his solo album and then kind of got into it from there. And then it was okay, well, this is the band he was in that kind of got him to where he's at. So then I ordered it sight unseen. Didn't really know a lot of Emperor. I had heard I'm the Black Wizards and maybe a song or two on a radio show or something, right? But that was really it. So I just feel it was more of that hunting it down and like the process. So I think that informs a lot of what we do now, right? Because you're constantly thinking about like, well, what if someone stumbles onto it that way? What if someone sees the album art and doesn't know anything about our band?
Yeah.
You know, I would hope that the album art would make them check it out. They go, oh, that's badass. I want, you know.
Sure. Or a T-shirt, right? Somebody's wearing a T-shirt at a show. Like, that design's cool. The logo looks badass. Like, I'm going to go on Spotify and listen to it. Like, I don't know. I think it just evolves, right?
I agree. Yeah. Because there's a lot of on the other end of the spectrum. There are bands that I love that I hate their fucking marketing or their shirts. Like, there are bands that I'm like, dude, I should make my own shirt because your vibe is not the vibe that I'm fucking with.
Totally. Yeah, no.
And these are like bands that I like love. Like, you know, I'm not gonna call anybody out, but like, damn, dude, come on. Help me out.
There's certain bands that I wish I could wear a T-shirt, but I'm not going to wear the ones they sell. So I just don't. Yeah, but I totally get it. Yeah, I think that's just something that's kind of in our DNA from having caught it at like the very tail end of doing the exploration thing. Honestly, I kind of treated it like a game. You know, like if you found a gem in 10 CDs, it was a victory for me. It was a win until I got more money and I could go do that again. You know,
it was a lot of fun, man. I remember Payday going up to the used record shop. And like what Matt said, going through every single album, the new releases or like newly in, you know, they weren't brand new, right? But whatever they have, you know, I remember like
staff
a big
picks too. That was a big thing too. Whoever was fucking like the metal guy at the record store.
A cool employee could hook you up for sure.
I remember like there was a few times that like justified that whole thing because like there's a few bands I'm into. There's this band I think they're Swedish called Anata. They're like this like tech death, like really kind of, you know, out there band. And I remember being a fan of them, same thing, but you couldn't find any of their shit. It was all out of print. Couldn't order it at the time, whatever. And I went into the disc replay that, you know, Matt said, the used record shop, and like someone had come in and just like got rid of their entire death metal collection.
Just offloaded.
I love when something like that happens.
Probably bought like 30 CDs, and it was just the entire Anata discography and fucking Necrophagus, Psychroptic. I bought all this crazy shit, you know, that I couldn't get my hands on, and it was just Christmas. You know?
If you could catch it on that day too,
man.
like if they just traded it and you were lucky to be there when it was freshly out.
And you can tell kind of sometimes because like I still do that. Like the exploration thing is very much like ingrained into me on a daily basis. Like whether it's it may not be all from music, but like things that I'm interested in or collect or whatever, like fucking trading cards, baseball cards and shit like that. Like that's a new obsessional hobby that now I'm like researching all that shit too. But like music was like the original one, and it still is a current. Like I still go to the fucking CD store and go through the used and just go like every CD that's used. It's not even in alphabetical fucking order at this point.
Right, it's just a mess now. Yeah,
but you can tell sometimes when someone like all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is new, and then oh wait, these 4 fucking bands are like someone must have just dumped some shit. So it's always that's always a perk. I love that.
Absolutely.
I have like bins full of CDs still. I don't have the heart to get rid of them. I don't like listen to them or use them anymore, but I still have them, and I'll occasionally thumb through it. I'm like, dude, I got good shit back in the day. Yeah, like, I like really lucky sometimes.
I definitely sold like I was an idiot and sold all my physical media, DVDs, Blu-rays, CDs, stuff like that. I did all that, and then 4 or 5 years ago, here I am going like, you know, I fucking
start buying it again, like the shit you used to have. You just start.
I rebought every CD that I had, you know, and I have more now. I have like 500 plus CDs at this point, but I mean, it's taken 3-4 years to get that to, and then my vinyl obviously is about 150. But I stopped really doing vinyl because I'm like just full on CD mode. Like,
I think a lot of people feel that way.
It sounds so much good. It sounds so much better, dude. Like I don't know how to tell anybody, but like that's the test.
There's something about the streaming thing. They just smash it. They compress the shit out of it. So I mean, to make that argument to somebody who maybe is like a casual fan, like they don't give a fuck.
Well, they don't have a CD player in their fucking car anyway, so fuck them.
True, or at home.
Secondary, if you were able to do like, if you would go like play WRAITH's, you know, fucking new Heathen's Touch, right? Play it on fucking streaming, and then play it on the CD, dude. There's gonna be in the same setup. You're gonna hear a big fucking difference.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, and I think like I'm not even against the Spotify thing, and I know some people are, especially artists are. But to me, it's the easiest way, man. It's the easiest way because if we get, you know, we play a show and there's, I don't know, a couple hundred people there, and there's 75 people that have never heard of us. What is the first thing you do when you hear a band you like? You pull your phone out. Yeah. You go on Spotify. You heart it, or you save it, and then when you leave the show, you listen to it. So it's like,
No.
if we don't have that, I get it. And metal people are pretty good about buying something from us.
Of course.
So like us, they'll buy a shirt, or they'll even buy the CD, or they'll buy the vinyl, or they'll buy the tape. To me, I don't think it's like to our detriment. I would agree it doesn't sound as good. And ideally, like as a weird nerdy collector, who grew up in the 90s buying metal records, like I like the idea of buying it. But I don't care, man.
I shouldn't say it doesn't sound good. It just sounds so much better. It sounds so much better on CD. Like, it sounds louder, sounds fuller, sounds so much better. Because, again, they got so much space and storage and, servers all over the world fucking with music. They're not trying to, like, give you a fucking FLAC file of, like, 80 megabytes for a song. They're giving it to you, they're giving it to you as little as they can be.
One more album on the, on the fucking
on the server. Yeah.
Yeah,
they got to fit them all.
Yep.
No, for sure.
But the Spotify thing, and the I know that there's a big fucking boohoo, and everyone wants to fucking hate Spotify or Apple or whoever the fuck it is.
Yeah, whatever streaming platform. But
I'll gladly pay the $9 a month, and I'll keep watching every band bitch about it on the internet. But the thing is, your band's not making thousands of dollars via Spotify anyway, so don't even worry about it. Secondary is doing more for you, because like you said, people are finding you on a way easier than they were ever finding you. Like, they're not ordering your album from fucking some Oslo warehouse waiting 2 months to get your shit, and they're not doing that. Especially these days, these times where, everyone's fucking like forgotten the thing in 3 seconds. But, I get that, yeah, Taylor Swift may be she may be cranking out a bunch of fucking money from Spotify, and fucking Hatebreed's not. But, like, more people are buying, well, I wouldn't say more people are buying Hatebreed merch than Taylor Swift merch, but, that's a skew.
They should be. But
more people are finding out about Hatebreed unknowingly than, like, Taylor Swift. And there's a lot of, like, again, I just said storage and space and service. Like, I don't know how much it costs to fucking stream every song in the world to anyone and everyone whenever you want. That's fucking insane. And I'm sure there's a lot of overhead.
Yeah, there's a lot of shit going on. Like, I get it. Yeah, and I think if you're a band and even a band at our level, and you're banking on the Spotify paycheck, you got to, and like your eggs are in the wrong basket. Shouldn't be your
It's a foot in the door.
Should not be your priority.
Checking the band out.
Right.
I know the way I've always used it in the past, and I'm kind of bummed because at least on my version on my phone or whatever, they don't have this currently. It was like an update got rid of it, but like bands you may like, or like if you look us up, right, and you go on, well, at least before they changed it, you'd go on there and then you see like Bewitcher, Hellripper, Midnight, Fugitive. You see all these other bands where like. Yeah, like if I was a person and maybe stumbled onto WRAITH or even stumbled onto one of those other bands, maybe I'm a big Bewitcher fan, and then you go to Bewitcher and it says you might also like WRAITH, check them out. Like, I found dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of bands through that feature.
Or the playlist.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have heard, and
playlists are a whole thing, but they've even gone one ahead. Like, Spotify has like a DJ feature where they're just going to serve you up a bunch of shit, whether you listen to or you may not have listened to. And even the smart playlists now are fucking awesome too, because like you can have a playlist, but you can make it a smart playlist where it'll play songs that it may think that would be a part of that playlist that aren't in there.
So, that makes sense. And
no, like not everyone is necessarily like has that sort of complex like maybe way that they approach it or whatever. But for me, if I find a band I like through one of those means of like kind of discovery, right? I'll find their Bandcamp. I'll find them on social media. I'll buy a shirt. I'll buy it.
Always.
I'll buy a vinyl.
Well, I think that's our little world. I think we understand.
That's what we do.
At least metal, right?
Yeah.
So it's
hardcore
like,
punk. Still,
I find that, and then from there, like I find a means to support the band, or when they come through, I go see them.
Right.
And
go to the show.
Have a conversation with them, even because a lot of the times, just like us, like we're coming through your town and we ain't playing the fucking, the Dimmadome. We're playing, we're playing the little bar,
the VFW that we rented out, the Moose Elk Lodge.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And we're more than happy to have a conversation with you for sure.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many T-shirts I have from bands I thought were cool that I've never worn, but I just know it's like you worked hard to be here. I'll give you $20. Give me the tank. Right. Give me the T-shirt. I'm gonna put it in my drawer. I'm gonna cycle it into the storage bin at some point. You know what I mean? Like
my girlfriend will wear it. I won't, but she'll get a new bed shirt.
Yeah. It's it becomes a sleep shirt.
We know,
I'll buy it.
In that capacity too. I mean, and bands kind of at that level, like that's potentially the difference between even more music getting made or not.
Yeah, 100%. That's how we continue to make the music. Is because people buy T-shirts and
buy a shirt, and then that funds literally the recording of the next record. Like the songs may be there, but the will is there, but that's the way, right? It's people supporting the bands.
That's definitely something that I kind of always try to bring up every episode. Probably is the fact there's no money in any of this shit. So there's that. But like, in order, and that's a topic I talk about with hardcore bands too, because it's way more like DIY mindset, like don't sell out, don't fucking do this, very DIY independent stuff. And I was like, what's too big for hardcore? Because obviously there's going to be a limit to where like hardcore is more popular than it needs to be, and a lot of like OG hardcore people would be like, oh, whatever, but it's going to bring in a lot more people, but bands will be able to, Turnstile will be able to be a band for another 20 years doing the same thing they're doing and still be hardcore adjacent or hardcore depending on where they go. But it's weird because you never know.
Yeah, but I do think it's important, right? Like I don't know. I feel like people that are afraid to make it too big, to me, like what's the point? Like you have this awesome thing and you're just going to keep it? Like you're not going to... I don't know. Is
it the allure of like the reason why you and I like it because it is small, and is that why we got into it, because it was a small niche like alt community? And then
maybe for sure, but now I feel like it's this thing that I want to share with everybody. Like it gave me so much, punk and hardcore and metal. Like it became my identity so early on, and it's just afforded me all this cool opportunity, the conversations, the travel, the people, the art, the creativity. Like it's given me everything cool that I could have ever wanted. So like I'm now at my 30s, I'm to the point where I'm like screaming it from the rooftops. Like you should be doing this. It's cool.
I definitely agree. And like the point of, and one of the goals with like Lambgoat and taking over Lambgoat was like, how can I get fucking corporate America workforce people to be like, oh yeah, I can like fucking Behemoth or some fucking, Cannibal Corpse, or you can do it, dude. You don't have to listen to country music or fucking corporate rock, butt rock, Breaking Benjamin. If you like that, that's cool too. But you can also fucking screaming music's fun too, dude. I'm 40 and I still listen to screaming music.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it's cool. Even more fun if you go to the show. Like that experience of just being around it is fucking incredible.
Just do some research before you go ahead. Before you go to some shows. If you haven't been to a show in a little bit, they might be throwing some ninja kicks and punches in some of them, but some of them aren't. Some of them still have classic circle pits and some push moshes. The research.
Drink water. Yeah. But you'll have to.
All right. Well, I think we'll end it on that note. And one more thing I think I should say about the Spotify thing, because to each his own. But if you're bitching about Spotify, you're doing like what Kirk Hammett did for fucking Napster. Like you're Kirk Hammett bitching about Napster because it's more of a perk than it is a downplay for you. Granted, you're missing out on a couple shekels, but that's made up somewhere else because the band was found by someone else in a different part of the region. So,
right, I would say I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, and I don't want to say poo-poo on everybody who says that, but come on, you're fucking yelling. You're yelling at the moon, dude. You're not going to change the world.
I mean, the thing is, it exists anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it's like one of those things where you could try to plant your flag in the sand and say no, like we're not going to have our music on it or whatever, but it's hurting you by not doing that.
For sure.
It's kind of like, depends what you want out of it too. We all have day jobs and we do as much music as we possibly can, and we will continue, I guarantee. Right. I'm paying my mortgage off my WRAITH paycheck that I've never gotten, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time too, like for me, it's just it's a way to get more people kind of on the train, and that's a win no matter what.
Well, not only that too, you can game the fucking system in Spotify, so that's why they probably do it the way they do it. You can place, like I've seen places in other countries that have just rows of cell phones watching videos and streaming songs. So you can game the system. So I could see why they're like tentative to do that and whatnot. But also like, don't fucking be Kirk or not Kirk. Sorry, Lars.
Lars,
Lars fucking Ulrich, bitching about fucking Napster, dude. Who cares? Yeah. Not only that, and if you think fucking Apple Music or Tidal pays their artists more, that's cool. They don't have as much music on there either. So that to each his own.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
We are not sponsored by Spotify in any way.
Yeah, obviously not sponsored by Spotify or any other streaming.
But hey, if you want to sponsor Spotify, I'll fucking rep it all day long, dude. I'll get a free account and some extra dollars.
Sure.
Well, boys, Matt, Jason, thank you for joining me on this lovely Friday evening, which I don't even know why we even scheduled it for Friday evening, but, here we are.
Works for me. Thanks, man. Thanks a lot for having us.
You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. You are not coming anywhere near here in the near future, but you are going on tour July through August. You're going out west. You'll be in the Midwest, and we're going to call it a North American tour because you go to Ontario and Quebec. Yeah.
Yep, that's right. We're going to Canada.
Cool.
Yep.
And you'll be with Exciter and Midnight on that, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And Hellwitch.
Oh, and Hellwitch. It's not on the email, but
no, it'll be a good time. Man. Yeah, we're getting to a lot of places we've never been before, so we're stoked. I think it'll be cool. Bring the show on the road.
That's right. Come say hi if you come to one of the shows.
Yeah.
Come say hey, and then June 28th, Fueled by Fire on Prosthetic.
Fear. Fueled by Fear.
Fueled by Fear. Fueled by Fire. We were talking about Metallica, and I was like, give me fuel, give me fire. You know what I'm saying?
It's in there.
He knows.
Yep.
All right.
Sure.
Yeah. Boys, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.